We're done. It's over. I looked at the woman in front of me, Scarlet Costello, the daughter of the most feared man in Chicago, and forced the words out. Fine. She didn't even blink, just turned and walked away. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The next morning, my apartment door was kicked off its hinges. Scarlet stood there in a blood-red dress, flanked by two guys built like refrigerators in black suits. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. I thought we broke up, I stammered, scrambling backward. What do you want? She took a step forward, then another, her heels clicking on my cheap laminate flooring. She tapped a perfectly manicured finger against my chest. My father and I had a little chat, she said, her voice deceptively sweet. He gave me two options. Either I move in with you, or you take a long swim in the Chicago River. She tilted her head. Your choice. The splintered remains of my front door slammed against the wall with a sound like a gunshot. I've been half asleep, and for a second I thought it was an earthquake. When I stumbled out of my bedroom, I saw a scene I'd never forget. Scarlet, my ex-girlfriend, stood in the ruined doorway like a queen surveying a conquered land. Her red dress was a slash of color against the grimy hallway of my walk-up. Behind her, the two goons in sunglasses and tailored suits looked like they could tear the building down with their bare hands. They were carrying a small mountain of designer luggage. Scarlet, are you insane? My brain went completely blank as I backed away. She strode into my tiny living room, the sharp clicks of her heels sounding like a death march on my heart. What was that, Ethan? Her smile was beautiful. Her eyes curved like crescent moons, but there was no warmth in them. I swallowed hard. I thought we broke up. Oh, we did, she said, stopping right in front of me. Her perfume, something dark and expensive, filled the air. She poked my chest with a nail polish the same shade of red as her dress. But Daddy disagrees. He said his daughter doesn't get dumped. Not without consequences. Her finger pressed harder right over my heart. So he gave me a choice. Option A, I live here with you until I get bored. Option B, you go with these gentlemen for a little trip to, let's say, calm your nerves permanently. Her smile widened. So wallet B. I glanced at the two human mountains behind her. They were as still and silent as statues. I had no doubt that with a single nod from Scarlet, they'd haul me out of here like a sack of potatoes. My dignity versus my life. It wasn't a tough call. I ground out the words through clenched teeth. You can stay. A triumphant grin lit up her face. She snapped her fingers. You heard him. Bring it in. The goons moved with silent efficiency, depositing the massive suitcases in my shoebox of a living room. They bowed their heads respectfully and left, pulling the broken door, mostly closed, behind them. Suddenly it was just the two of us. The silence was so thick you could have drowned in it. She surveyed my apartment like a health inspector in a condemned restaurant, her brow furrowing deeper with every second. This is it. This is the whole place, she sighed dramatically. You poor thing. I wanted to scream. I'm a poor thing. She popped open a suitcase, revealing a cascade of designer clothes, handbags, and an entire case of what looked like ridiculously expensive wine. It all looked absurdly out of place in my world of ramen noodles and IKEA furniture. I took a deep breath, making one last stand for my sanity. Okay, if you're going to live here, we need to set some ground rules. First, you're not allowed in my bedroom. Second, we split all the bills 50-50. And third, Scarlet, my ex-girlfriend, stood in the ruined doorway like a queen surveying a conquered land. She wasn't even listening. She pulled an onyx black credit card from her wallet and slapped it on my coffee table. Take this by the building. I just stared at it. As of now, she said, crossing her arms and looking down her nose at me. I'm your landlord, and the landlord has some new rules. 1, curfew is 10 p.m. 2, don't bring any sketchy friends home. And 3, stay on my business. I looked from the black AMX to her unyielding face, and every argument I had died in my throat. She commandeered my bedroom without a second thought, tossing all my stuff into the living room. That night, I tried to sleep on a lumpy sofa, listening to her talking on the phone through the thin wall. Her voice was impatient. Stop calling me. I'm at my boyfriend's place. I nearly vaulted off the couch. Boyfriend. We broke up. I stormed over to the bedroom door and pounded on it. It swung open. She stood there in a black silk nightdress, her dark hair tumbling over her shoulders, still damp from the shower. The scent of steam and flowers washed over me. The entire angry speech I'd prepared vanished from my mind. I could feel my face getting hot. She raised an eyebrow. Problem? Before I could answer, she yawned. Look, I'm exhausted and I have to get up early to make you breakfast. With a soft click, the door closed in my face. I stood there for a long moment, one hand over my heart, which was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. For the first time, I started to have the tiniest sliver of doubt about my decision to break up with her. The next morning, it wasn't my alarm that woke me up, but the smell of smoke. Cough, cough! I shot up from the sofa. The living room was filled with a thick gray haze. It looked like the whole apartment was on fire. Barefoot, I sprinted into the kitchen and skidded to a halt. There was Scarlet, her face smudged with soot, looking like a bewildered raccoon. She was holding a frying pan. In the pan was a blackened, unrecognizable lump. Rewrite it with human tone and don't miss any word ChatGPT said. You're giving feedback on a new version of ChatGPT. Which response do you prefer? Responses may take a moment to load. ChatGPT response 1, we're done. It's over. I looked straight at the woman standing before me, Scarlet Costello, daughter of Chicago's most feared man, and forced the words out. Fine. She didn't flinch. Without another word, she turned and walked away. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The next morning, my apartment door was kicked off its hinges. Scarlet stood in the doorway wearing a blood-red dress, flanked by two men built like refrigerators in black suits. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. I thought we broke up, I stammered, backing away. What do you want? She took a step forward, then another, her heels clicking sharply on my cheap laminate floor. Tapping a perfectly manicured finger against my chest, she said, My father and I had a little chat. He gave me two options. Either I move in with you, or you take a long swim in the Chicago River. She tilted her head slightly. Your choice. The splintered remains of my door slammed against the wall with a sound like a gunshot. Half asleep, I thought it was an earthquake. When I stumbled out of my bedroom, the scene before me froze me in place. Scarlet, my ex-girlfriend, stood in the ruined doorway like a queen surveying conquered land. Her red dress stood out vividly against the grimy hallway. Behind her, the two goons in tailored suits looked capable of tearing the building down with their bare hands. They carried what could only be described as a small mountain of designer luggage. Scarlet, are you insane? I blurted, backing up. She strode into my cramped living room, her heels clicking like a countdown. What was that, Ethan? Her smile was beautiful, eyes curved like crescent moons, but cold. I thought we broke up. Oh, we did, she said, stopping directly in front of me. Her perfume, dark expensive, filled the air. She poked my chest, her nail the same crimson as her dress. But Daddy disagrees. He said his daughter doesn't get dumped. Not without consequences. Her finger pressed harder over my heart. So he gave me a choice. Option A, I live here with you until I get bored. Option B, you go with these gentlemen for a little trip to, let's say, calm your nerves permanently. Her smile widened. So what'll it be? I glanced at the two men behind her, silent, immovable. There was no doubt they would drag me out of here with a single nod from her. My dignity or my life, it wasn't a hard decision. You can stay, I said through clenched teeth. A triumphant grin spread across her face. She snapped her fingers. You heard him. Bring it in. The goons moved efficiently, depositing her massive luggage in my shoebox of a living room. Then they bowed slightly and left, pulling what was left of my door mostly closed. Suddenly, it was just the two of us. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Scarlet looked around my apartment like a health inspector at a condemned restaurant, her expression souring with every detail. This is it? The whole place. She sighed dramatically. You poor thing. I wanted to yell. I'm the poor thing? She opened a suitcase, revealing a cascade of designer clothes, handbags, and even an entire case of fine wine. The luxury of it all looked absurd against my world of ramen noodles and IKEA furniture. I took a deep breath, trying to cling to some semblance of control. Okay, if you're going to live here, we need to set some ground rules. First, you're not allowed in my bedroom. Second, we split bills 50-50. And third, she wasn't even listening. Pulling out a sleek black credit card, she placed it on my coffee table. Take this. Buy the building. I stared, speechless. As of now, she said, crossing her arms and looking down at me, I'm your landlord. And the landlord has new rules. 1, curfew is 10 p.m. 2, don't bring sketchy friends home. 3, stay out of my business. I looked from the black card to her unyielding expression, and every argument I had died on my lips. She took over my bedroom without hesitation, tossing my things into the living room. That night, I tried to sleep on the couch, listening through the thin wall as she spoke on the phone. "Stop calling me. I'm at my boyfriend's place." I nearly fell off the sofa. "Boyfriend? We broke up!" I stormed to the bedroom and pounded on the door. It swung open. She stood there in a black silk nightdress, her dark hair damp and cascading over her shoulders. The scent of steam and flowers enveloped me, and my prepared rant evaporated. She raised an eyebrow. "Problem?" I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, she yawned. "Look, I'm exhausted. I have to get up early to make you breakfast." She closed the door softly in my face. I stood there for a long moment, hand over my pounding chest. For the first time, I felt a sliver of doubt about my decision to end things. The next morning, smoke, not my alarm, woke me. Coughing, I jumped off the couch. The living room was filled with gray haze. Barefoot, I ran into the kitchen and froze. Scarlet stood there, face smudged with soot like a bewildered raccoon holding a frying pan. Inside was a blackened, unrecognizable lump. Rewrite it with human tone and don't miss any word I turned. Scarlet was leaning casually against the doorframe, arms crossed, a knowing smirk curving her lips. Maya's face instantly tightened with discomfort, and my own skin began to crawl. There was no way out of it. I had to lead her upstairs. The second we stepped inside, Scarlet went straight into attack mode. She'd changed into one of my white button-down shirts. On her, it looked criminally short, the hem barely grazing the tops of her thighs. She was barefoot, lounging on the sofa like she owned the place, eyes sharp and assessing as they locked on a nervous Maya. "Have a seat," she purred. "Make yourself at home." Maya awkwardly handed me the book. "Ethan, I should probably get going," she whispered. "What's the rush?" Scarlett's voice was soft, but there was something dangerous underneath it. She picked up an apple from the coffee table and began peeling it in one long, perfect spiral. "I remember you," she said without looking up. "We met at that bakery. You bought Ethan a whole box of donuts." Maya went pale. "His stomach's sensitive," Scarlet continued smoothly. "You probably shouldn't give him such sugary things in the future." She finished peeling, sliced the apple neatly, and held a piece up to my lips. "Open up!" I froze. Under Maya's wide, shocked gaze, I mechanically obeyed, taking a bite. The air in the room turned to ice. Maya couldn't take it anymore. She muttered an excuse and practically bolted out of the apartment. The door had barely clicked shut when everything I'd been holding in for days exploded. "Scarlet, what the hell is your problem?" "We are broken up." She stood, her eyes going cold as steel. "I told you no sketchy friends." "She's my friend," I shouted. "A friend?" She sneered, stalking closer. "A friend who texts you at midnight asking if you're asleep?" My stomach dropped. She'd been through my phone. A wave of humiliation and fury surged through me. "You've gone too far." I was shaking, pointing at her, words failing me. Finally, I spun around, slammed the door so hard the walls rattled, and stormed out. It was the first time I'd ever slammed a door on her. I sat in the small park downstairs for a long time, smoking through half a pack of cigarettes until my hands stopped trembling. When I finally went back up, the apartment was dark. Pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch and froze. Scarlet was curled up on the sofa, hugging her knees, looking impossibly small. When the light flicked on, she lifted her head. Her eyes were red and swollen. All the anger drained out of me in an instant, leaving behind a hollow ache I couldn't name. After that fight, Scarlet and I entered a cold war. Two strangers living under the same roof? I refused to eat the food she made, living on instant ramen instead. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, lips parting like she wanted to say something, but she never did. The light in her eyes dimmed a little more each day. I told myself I needed to take back control of my life. Draw a line, move on. So, I pulled out my phone and found Chloe's number, a coworker who'd been hinting for a while. "You free this weekend? I'd like to take you to a movie." The reply came almost instantly. "I'd love that," followed by a blushing emoji. I made a point of calling her from the living room, loud enough for Scarlet to hear every word. I put the phone on speaker, talking about which movie we should see, which restaurant we should try afterward. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Scarlet in the kitchen. Her back was to me. Her shoulders stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. No reaction. Nothing. A wave of disappointment hit me before I could stop it, quickly replaced by anger. See? She didn't care at all. It had all been a game. The night before the date, I couldn't sleep. Sometime after midnight, I got up to get a glass of water. As I passed the window, something outside caught my eye. A black Mercedes S-Class was parked at the curb, its headlights cutting through the darkness. It looked completely out of place in our rundown neighborhood. As I wondered who it belonged to, the building's front door opened, and Scarlet slipped out. She was wearing a simple black dress. She hurried toward the Mercedes and climbed into the passenger seat. The driver, a man, leaned toward her. From where I stood, I couldn't see his face, just his silhouette. Older. His movements were intimate, like he was helping her with her seatbelt. Then the car pulled away, vanishing into the night. My mind went blank. The glass in my hand slipped, shattering on the floor. Cold water splashed over my legs, but I didn't even feel it. All of it, the bossy concern, the clumsy breakfast, the nights waiting up for me, it all replayed in my mind, cruel and mocking. Her claims of having nowhere else to go, of needing me, all lies. She'd already found her next mark, some rich old guy in a Mercedes. And I, Ethan Walker, had been the fool she played from the start. A toxic mix of rage and jealousy coiled in my gut like a snake. I clenched my fists until my nails drew blood. Then I started laughing. A bitter, hollow sound. I was laughing at myself for being such a pathetic idiot. Well played, Scarlet. Well played. The next morning I stumbled out of the living room, eyes heavy, brain numb. And there she was, in the kitchen, humming softly, acting like nothing had happened. She came out holding a plate of perfectly golden French toast and a fried egg, a tentative smile on her face. I made you breakfast. You can't keep eating that ramen, it's not good for you. I stared at the steaming plate, bile rising in my throat. Then I laughed, cold and humorless. What's the matter? And I said, didn't the guy in the Mercedes feed you last night? The plate trembled in her hands. The color drained from her face. What did you say? You heard me, I snapped, jealousy making my voice sharp and cruel. I must be a real sucker. I actually thought the mob princess might have a heart. Turns out you're just as happy climbing into some old guy's luxury car in the middle of the night. My words landed like poison, aimed straight for her heart. He's my boss, she whispered, voice shaking, more like a plea than a defense. Your boss. I laughed, louder this time, crueler. The kind of boss you sneak out to meet at 3 a.m. I leaned in. Congratulations, Scarlet. Looks like you finally found someone in your league. So why don't you take your things and get the hell out of my life? I spat those last words at her. I watched her eyes fill with tears, and she bit her lips so hard she wouldn't let them fall. Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to speak, to explain. Then she said nothing. The last spark of light in her eyes went out. All she managed was, Ethan, you're going to regret this. Then she turned, walked into the bedroom, and slammed the door so hard the sound echoed around the silent apartment. I looked down at the breakfast on the table, but there was no victory in it, no satisfaction. Just a hollow, cavernous emptiness, like something inside me had been carved out. With a roar of frustration, I swept the plate and the food into the trash. Regret? I had none. She was the one who should be regretting this. That weekend, I went on my date with Chloe. I put on a new shirt, dabbed on some cologne, and tried to look like I had my act together. Chloe was sweet. She'd clearly made an effort, her smile genuine, but I was a million miles away. In the dark theater, she tried to lean her head on my shoulder a couple of times, and I flinched away without thinking. The hurt on her face was plain. I couldn't tell you a single thing about the movie. All I could see was Scarlett's pale, tear-streaked face. All I could hear was her voice. You're going to regret this. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, thinking it was her. It never was. After the movie, Chloe suggested a drink at a quiet bar nearby. For some reason, I agreed. The lights were low, the music moody. Chloe moved closer, eyes warm with suggestion. Ethan, she said, breath tasting faintly of wine, is everything okay? You seem distracted. She leaned in. You know, I was thinking... Right then, my phone erupted in my pocket, vibrating like a trapped hornet. An unknown number. Irritated, I answered. The line filled with loud music and sleazy laughter. Then a voice I knew better than my own came through, slurred and panicked. Ethan, help me. It was Scarlet, her voice raw with terror. I'm at Nightfall Lounge, VIP room 888. A man's gruff voice bellowed on the other end. You little... Who are you calling? Then the line went dead. In that instant, all the anger, jealousy, and pride evaporated. In their place rose a cold wave of panic. She was in trouble. I shot to my feet, chair crashing to the floor. I'm sorry, I have to go, I yelled at a stunned Chloe and ran out of the bar into the street, flagging down a cab, repeating one frantic mantra. Let her be okay. Please let her be okay. If anything happened to her, I knew I'd never forgive myself. She was right, I was the one who would regret this. I kicked open the VIP door to room 888 at the Nightfall Lounge so hard I was surprised it stayed on its hinges. Adrenaline burned behind my eyes. The room stank of cigar smoke and expensive liquor. A bunch of greasy businessmen were clustered around the main sofa. In the middle of them, Scarlet was being held down by a fat man in a garish Hawaiian shirt. Sterling, a name I'd seen in the business pages. He was forcing a bottle of whiskey to her lips. Don't play hard to get, sweetheart. Mr. Sterling wants a drink with you. You should be grateful, slurred one of the men. Scarlet twisted in his grip, struggling. In her hand, she clutched the jagged neck of a broken beer bottle, pointing it at them with desperate defiance, a vulnerability I'd never seen in her before. Get your hands off her! I roared, fury turning the world red. I launched myself across the room and slammed into Sterling, sending him stumbling into a glass coffee table. Bottles and glasses shattered. I hauled Scarlet behind me, using my body to shield her. Sterling, furious and humiliated, pointed a trembling finger at me. Who the hell are you? Get out before you get hurt, he barked. I looked from his bloated red face to Scarlet, trembling behind me. The heat of anger cooled into something icy and dangerous. I fixed Sterling with a slow, deliberate stare. Do you have any idea who her father is? I asked. He scoffed. I don't care if her father's the damn president. Tonight she's drinking with me. I let the words I knew would stop him roll out, low and menacing, the one name that carried more weight in this city than any law, Scarlet's father. The smirk on Sterling's face froze, then melted into pure fear. The other men went pale. Silence swallowed the room. I pressed my advantage, channeling every mob movie I'd ever watched. Mr. Costello sent me to bring his daughter home, I said. He said if anyone so much as touches a hair on her head, they should start getting fitted for a new pair of concrete shoes. You gentlemen feel like taking a swim in the river? I let my gaze sweep over each of them. The men looked like they might turn green. Sterling was practically shaking, his jowls quivering as his face drained of color. A misunderstanding, he stammered, holding up his hands. A complete misunderstanding. I had no idea she was Mr. Costello's daughter. He was bowing now, apologizing over and over. I'd had enough. I grabbed Scarlet's hand. She was still staring at me, dazed, and pulled her from the room. We walked out through the suddenly silent, terrified crowd like we owned the place. Outside, the cool night air hit me, and I realized my back was soaked in sweat. I looked down at Scarlet. She was still holding onto my sleeve, her grip trembling. And in that moment, I finally understood. The Mercedes. The business dinner. It wasn't her finding a new man. It was her, fighting a war she never wanted to fight. And I was the bastard who'd sent her onto that battlefield with the cruelest words I could find. The cab ride home was silent. Scarlet just stared out the window, watching the blurred city lights flicker by. I wanted to apologize, to say something, anything, but the words felt cheap and meaningless. I'm sorry couldn't even begin to cover the damage I'd done. As we neared our building, her body suddenly went limp. She slumped against me and I barely caught her before she fell. Her skin was burning up. The alcohol had finally hit her. She was completely out of it, mumbling my name over and over again. Ethan, Ethan. Her voice was small, broken. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight as I half carried her up the stairs and into the apartment. I laid her down gently on the bed. She moaned softly, her fingers clawing weakly at the collar of her dress. I grabbed a damp washcloth and began to wipe her face, trying to cool her down. As I dabbed her forehead, her eyes fluttered open. She reached for my hand, her gaze hazy and unfocused, but her grip firm. She pressed my hand against her hot cheek and nuzzled it like a small, wounded animal seeking comfort. Ethan, she whispered, her voice raspy and fragile. Don't go. My heart skipped a beat. The whole world seemed to fade away until all I could hear was the sound of our breathing in the quiet room. Without even realizing it, I started to lean down. Her lips were parted, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. Just as our lips were about to touch, a phone buzzed in the pocket of her dress. The sound jolted me back to reality. I froze, then pulled away. I reached into her pocket and took out the phone. The screen lit up with the name Mr. Sterling. A cold fury surged through me. I hit accept and put it on speaker. You little, Sterling's voice slurred through the line, dripping with rage. You think you can get away with that? I'll have you blacklisted. You'll never work in this city again. I didn't say a word. I just ended the call, powered off the phone, and set it on the nightstand. Now wasn't the time. I slipped off her heels, pulled the blanket over her, and sat in the chair beside the bed. I stayed there, watching her sleep until the first light of dawn began to creep through the blinds. When the morning sun touched her face, Scarlet stirred. She opened her eyes and saw me slumped over in the chair, half asleep. Her expression was a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something softer, something I couldn't quite read. The sound of her moving woke me. I stretched, my neck aching from the awkward position. You're awake, I said, standing. I poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. She took it silently, staring at the glass as she drank. Last night, she began, her voice hesitant. Sterling called, I said flatly. He said he's going to make sure you never work again. I paused, then added, doesn't matter. You're fired anyway. She froze, the glass still in her hands. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide with shock. From now on, I said quietly, I'm taking care of you. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then the tension in her shoulders melted, and her lips trembled into something like relief. Good, she whispered, setting the glass down. I hated that place. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look truly exhausted, like the weight of everything she'd been holding in had finally broken her down. That morning, she told me everything. She told me about her last boyfriend, the one who took $1 million check from her father to disappear. He said he loved me, she said, voice hollow, but his love had a price tag. She told me how tired she was of being feared, of being seen as nothing but Scarlet Costello, the mob princess. She just wanted to be normal. I ran away from home, she said softly. I wanted to prove I could make it on my own without my father's name. But every company that saw my resume treated me like a liability. They were all terrified of him. Sterling's company was the only one that would hire me, and even then, only because my dad pulled strings. He thought he was protecting me, keeping me under his thumb. Look how that turned out. She gave a bitter laugh, though her eyes were rimmed red. The reason I suggested we break up, she continued, was because of the way Maya looked at me that day. She was scared of me, and I realized I was dragging you into my world, a world you never asked for. I didn't want you to start looking at me like that, too. Her voice cracked. But when I went home after we broke up, my father tried to force me into an arranged marriage with some stranger. We had a huge fight, and I just ran. She looked up at me then, eyes pleading. I had nowhere to go, Ethan. The only person I could think of, the only place I felt safe, was here. With you, the river threat, all of it. It was a lie. I just didn't know any other way to make you let me stay. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The pain was sharp, raw, and suffocating. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms, holding her so tightly I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. I'm so sorry, I whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, Scarlet. It was all I could manage to say. Right there in front of her, I pulled out my phone, deleted Chloe's contact, and wiped my entire call history clean, anything that could ever make her doubt me again. Then I took her face gently in my hands and looked her straight in the eyes. From now on, I said, this is your home. You can stay as long as you want. No one is ever kicking you out again, not even me. After that, we started truly living together. It wasn't perfect, it was messy, sweet, and full of the quiet rhythms that come with sharing a life. I taught her how to cook. We began with scrambled eggs. The kitchen was so small that I had to stand behind her, my arms around her waist, my hands guiding hers as I showed her how to hold the spatula. She was warm and soft against me, and every time she leaned back, my heart would start pounding like it wanted out of my chest. She learned fast, or maybe she was just determined. Either way, her cooking improved quickly. Before long, I was coming home every night to elaborate meals. I even put on 10 pounds in a month. She was still bossy, but now her commands carried something different, this fierce, protective kind of love. If I stayed up too late playing video games, she'd storm into the room, unplug the console, and physically drag me to bed. I'd complain, sure, but my heart would be soaring the whole time. We'd curl up together on that little sofa to watch old movies, and she'd fall asleep with her head resting on my shoulder. I'd sit perfectly still for hours, my arm going numb just so I wouldn't wake her. Then one night, I came home soaked from a thunderstorm and woke up the next morning with a raging fever. She panicked, her face turned white with fear, and actually tried to piggyback me to the emergency room. I somehow convinced her it was just a cold, but that didn't stop her. She spent the rest of the night driving all over the city, hitting every 24-hour pharmacy she could find, buying every cold medicine known to man. Watching her fuss over me, seeing the sweat on her brow, the worry in her eyes, it filled a hollow space inside me I hadn't even realized existed. After that, I started looking forward to the end of the workday. I started hurrying home, knowing that in that tiny, rundown apartment, a light would be on and someone would be waiting for me. When my friends called to go out for drinks, I'd turn them down without a second thought. Can't, I'd say, smirking. The girlfriend keeps me on a short leash. They hated that grin. Then came one Friday night. I got home late from work, headed straight for the shower and opened the bathroom door, only to freeze in place. Scarlet was just stepping out of the steam-filled room wrapped in a towel. Startled, she jumped back, and the towel slipped to the floor. The air crackled. The world stopped. I just stood there, completely frozen. Her face flushed deep red from her neck all the way up to her hairline. She let out a tiny squeak, but she didn't run. She just stood there, arms crossed over her chest, staring at me with wide, vulnerable eyes. And in that single heart-stopping moment, I knew. This was it. And then the door was kicked in again. This time, the entire door flew off its hinges and crashed onto the floor. Scarlet and I, ripped from our trance, just stared in shock at the doorway. A formidable older man stood there, dressed in a severe black suit, radiating an aura of pure intimidation. Behind him were 4 more goons, an upgrade from the last 2. "Enough of this foolishness," the man said, his voice low and rough like gravel. He didn't even look at me.
"Scarlet, you're coming home."
It was her father, the king of Chicago's underworld. Scarlet went pale. She scrambled to snatch the towel off the floor and instinctively moved to stand in front of me, like a lioness protecting her cub. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm not leaving." Her father let out a cold, humorless chuckle. "What? You'd throw away your family for this? This nobody?" His gaze finally landed on me, sharp, dismissive, cutting right through me. "What can he give you?" "A life in this dump." "With a broken door?" I took a deep breath. Slowly, I moved Scarlet behind me and faced him head-on. I locked eyes with him, a predator's stare. "Sir," I said, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. "You're right. In the past, I failed her. I let her get hurt." I tightened my grip on Scarlet's hand. It was ice cold. I gave it a reassuring squeeze. "I can't give her mansions or sports cars." "I can't give her the world you can," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "But I can give her something men like Sterling never will: safety, respect. I can give her the normal, quiet life that she wants, the kind of life your money can't buy." My voice grew steadier, louder, filled with conviction. "She wants to be a normal person, so I'll be normal with her. If she doesn't want to do something, I'll stand between her and the world to stop it. And if she wants to do something, I'll be right there beside her." I turned to look at Scarlet. Her eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. Then I looked back at her father, my heart pounding, my voice clear and unwavering. "She's not going anywhere. She's staying here with me. I love her, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." The room fell utterly silent. Mr. Costello stared at me for what felt like an eternity. I was sure he was about to order his men to toss me into the river. Then finally he exhaled sharply, a short, heavy sigh. Something unreadable flickered across his stony face. He turned to his men. "We're leaving." He paused at the door, his back still to us. "If I ever hear that my daughter has shed a single tear because of you..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. "You know what will happen, boy." And then he was gone. The apartment was quiet again, except for the sound of our breathing and the wind whistling through the empty doorway. Scarlet was still staring at me, her eyes red and wide as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. Then she suddenly threw herself into my arms, hugging me as tight as she could. "Ethan," she mumbled into my chest, her voice thick with emotion. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." I laughed softly, holding her close, running my fingers through her hair. "So, you're not worried about your dad making me disappear anymore?" She pulled back, the familiar fire flickering in her eyes even as her cheeks were still streaked with tears. "He wouldn't dare." I smiled and leaned down to kiss her. This kiss was different. There was no hesitation, no restraint. It was full of bone-deep relief, a second chance, and a love so powerful it felt like a force of nature. When we finally broke apart, I whispered in her ear. Scarlet Costello. Let's start over. She didn't say a word. She just nodded fiercely, stood on her toes, and kissed me again. Deeper, more passionate than before. Everything was back on track. Better than before. We bought a new reinforced door and spent the weekend fixing up the apartment, making it truly ours. A few days later, I was in the kitchen, trying to master her favorite dish, honey-glazed salmon, when Scarlet came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Hey, she said softly, resting her chin on my shoulder. My dad called. My stomach tightened. What did he want now? He said this apartment's too small. Not good enough for his daughter. She paused. So, he bought us a penthouse overlooking the lake downtown. I blinked. Tell him thanks, but no thanks. We can buy our own place. Okay, she said. Then added, he also said if we don't accept it. She drew out the silence. He's going to go with Plan B. I frowned. Plan B? The river, she grinned. He said it's your choice. I turned off the stove, spun around, and tweaked her nose. I guess we're moving then. She burst out laughing, that bright, carefree sound that filled our tiny kitchen like sunlight. We just stood there smiling at each other. Outside the window, the sun was shining, warm and golden. The future was ours. And I knew right then that my story with the mob boss's daughter wasn't over. It was only just beginning.